Got the thumbs up. Time to go. All right. I'm U.S. Election Assistance Commission Chairman Ben Hovland, and I'm calling this public meeting of the U.S. Election Assistance Commission to order. Before we begin, I'd like to ask everyone in attendance to rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. For the first order of business, I'll call the roll and establish a quorum. Vice Chair Palmer.
Here.
Commissioner Hicks.
Present.
Commissioner McCormick.
Here.
All members are present. A quorum is established. With that, I will now take a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
I move to approve the agenda as submitted.
I second it.
It has been properly moved and seconded to approve today's agenda as submitted. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, today's agenda as submitted has been approved. Great. Well, thank you again for joining us today to discuss new initiatives in the EAC's Election Technology Division. Through this work, the EAC helps ensure America's elections are safe, secure, accurate, and accessible. We have some pretty exciting news to begin today's hearing. On behalf of the EAC, we would like to extend our congratulations to KnowInk on being the first federally certified electronic poll book manufacturer. The EAC issued a certification for their poll pad 3.6 just yesterday. An exciting day for the EAC and for the program. Electronic poll books are designed to replace paper poll lists by accessing digital voter registration records on a laptop or tablet. They represent a significant shift in how election officials serve their voters, with roughly 84% of jurisdictions across the country now utilizing electronic poll books. The EAC launched this certification program last year to evaluate and test the security, accessibility, and usability of electronic poll books across the country. We are pleased to have KnowInk with us today to discuss their experience going through the certification program. I also want to congratulate the EAC's Election Supporting Technology Evaluation Program staff on this milestone. Also known as ESTEP, they will join our first panel along with SLI compliance to discuss the certification program from the perspective of a voting system test laboratory. In the second half of today's meeting, we will hear from the EAC's Field Services Program. The team assists states and local jurisdictions in the verification of EAC-certified fielded systems on an ongoing basis and will highlight the program's first hash verification projects. The panel will also include election administrators from Nebraska who will discuss their experiences participating in this program. To put it simply, hash verification is a security tool used to see if software has been altered. In this case, voting systems certified by the EAC. I want to thank all of our panelists for being with us today. I look forward to your insights and feedback on the EAC's election technology programs and how we can effectively support elections officials and the wider community. And with that, I'll turn it over to Vice Chair Palmer for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairman Hovland. I'd like to echo the significance of today's discussion as you laid out. In recent years, there's been an increasing demand for the evaluation of election supporting technology, such as electronic poll books, to ensure that they are secure in their use for election officials. The demand for testing has been repeatedly affirmed by numerous stakeholders, including the Congress, which highlighted the necessity for modern, secure, and reliable election systems. I'm pleased to say that the EAC team has taken a direct action to evaluate and raise the standards for the nation's election supporting systems, particularly electronic poll books, to assist the states and localities and raise confidence of American voters in the process. So the voluntary electronic poll book certification program represents a significant advancement in the agency's efforts to enhance and safeguard our nation's election systems. And this aligns perfectly with the EAC's mission to improve the overall performance of election administration and the integrity of our elections. Now, this wouldn't be possible without the dedicated work of our technology experts. I'd like to thank and welcome Elizabeth Beatrice, who is heading up the electronic poll book testing program, to the hearing and should be one of our witnesses. She'll be testifying today on the ongoing work that we're doing here at the EAC. By establishing rigorous standards in a comprehensive evaluation program, we're setting a new benchmark for election technology development and testing. Today, I'm particularly interested in hearing more about the best practices that have emerged as a result of implementing the new standards for poll books and how we ensure flexibility for the future ongoing evaluation of these systems. Now, as the chairman noted, as we endeavor together to enhance the quality of our quality monitoring program of voting systems, I'm glad we also have the opportunity today to hear about the efforts of the field services program and how that relationship works with the states, which is vital. We're grateful for the jurisdictions that agreed to be a part of this pilot, that our certified systems are being properly used in elections. It also provides us with the opportunity to share updates and resources that are valuable to ensuring a thriving election community. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Palmer. Commissioner Hicks.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to thank everyone for joining us here today. I was able to join Dan Cox and Tom Freitag from the EAC's Field Services team on their site visit during the hashtag verification testing. I want to express my deep appreciation to the extremely patient Chief Election Officer Scott Nagy of the Hawaii Office of Elections. It was his openness and his office openness to work with us, listening to our suggestions and documenting every step of the way that made this a very successful effort. One of the most important pieces was to see and hear from the Americans observing and participating in the process during that field test. It was extremely valuable to see the field services team on the ground and watch them evaluate how the EAC can best assist election officials across the country. While the Hawaii team could not be with us today, we're grateful to have Wayne Bina and Brian Cruz to discuss the success and lessons learned from their experiences with the field services team in Douglas County, Nebraska. The approach of the field services program builds on the success of the ESTEP team led by Dr. Jay Phelps. While the pilot programs to the establishment of the formal framework, it has been exciting to witness the progress the team has made. As with all things election related, it has been a collaborative approach with the ESTEP team, working with election officials, manufacturers, test labs to develop the VVSG poll book certification, the voluntary electronic poll book certification program. We hope state and manufacturers will implement these standards and participate in the certification program, which is entirely voluntary. It will take us all working together to ensure the security and reliability of our elections processes. Thank you, Chairman, and I turn this back over to you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hicks. Commissioner McCormick.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's hearing on focusing on a couple of the newer election technology programs at the EAC. I'm looking forward to participating in today's hearing and highlighting the achievements of the voluntary electronic poll book certification program. The dedication and hard work of Jay Phelps and his team have been instrumental in bringing this long-wanted program to fruition at the EAC. We appreciate the team's commitment to excellence and innovation and the responsiveness to this need in the election process, which provides some standardization. As we continue to advance U.S. election technology, it is crucial the EAC remains focused on our core values of security and transparency and our directive from the Help America Vote Act of also making these systems accessible. It is important to invest in the security of all election systems. I'm looking forward to hearing more about the successes and challenges faced by our panelists and to exploring new opportunities for collaboration and improvement. And speaking of exploring new opportunities, I encourage manufacturers and jurisdictions to submit their electronic poll books for evaluation so we can continue to grow this program and improve the security of these systems with the goal of improving voters' trust and confidence in the election process. I'm also pleased that we'll hear from Dan Cox and our Field Services program about their recent campaigns. For a long time, this agency has desired to have the ability to see how the EAC certified systems operate in the field. It is one thing to say that a system is certified, but as a matter of election integrity, it is so much more to be able to reassure voters that these systems are operating in election jurisdictions as the EAC certified them. Thank you to those who have participated in these jurisdictional visits, and I eagerly anticipate learning more about the perspectives of both the jurisdictions and the EAC staff. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I turn it back to you.
Thank you, Commissioner McCormick. I'd now like to invite Executive Director Brianna Schlitz up for some opening remarks as well.
Thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to give remarks. The theme of today's event is election technology, and the cornerstone of the EEC's work in this area has been testing and certification of voting systems. We prioritized agency resources to the security of election technology and successfully enhanced these programs. As you're aware, the EEC's approach to testing and certification is designed to support state and local officials, respecting the decentralized nature of elections while offering robust federal support that states can use how best fits their needs. This voluntary program evaluates voting systems and other technologies to ensure they meet the rigorous federal standards, improving the security of elections. States may choose to adopt EAC certified systems or adapt EAC standards to meet local requirements, ultimately saving costs and resources. Currently, 41 states require EAC certification for voting systems, the use of one of EAC's accredited voting system test laboratories, or both. The program also minimizes duplication of efforts, allowing states to benefit from federally established guidelines and evaluations. The EEC continues to adapt its programs to meet the changing needs of election technology, ensuring continued relevance and utility, and that you'll hear more about today. With the latest Voluntary Voting Systems Guidelines, or VVSG 2.0, the EEC has laid the groundwork for the next generation of voting systems. With 3 systems currently undergoing testing to VVSG 2.0, we look forward to seeing the first 2.0 systems certified later this year. The EEC's lifecycle policy ensures that 1.0 systems are still supported and can be used while we move towards 2.0 systems. And we have confidence in both the existing certified systems, but we're also excited about what 2.0 means for election officials serving voters. Throughout the development of VVSG 2.0, the balance of security and accessibility was emphasized from our board members, election officials, and members of the public. With that in mind, VVSG 2.0 integrates security into the design and development process from the very outset. These layers of security are fundamental to the architecture and the functionality of voting systems. VVSG 2.0 has also meant enhanced accessibility for all voters and without diminishing security or accuracy. We collaborated closely with accessibility advocates to build on the requirements of previous standards. While the implementation of VVSG 2.0 has made great strides in the last year, we cannot pause this progress. We consistently are seeking feedback and working with stakeholders to improve through both our request for interpretation process and also our technical guidelines development committee. The EEC will continue to look forward to aligning with modern technology as needed so that we can future-ready our standards. I hope these remarks reflect the work and dedication the agency has given to advance VVSG and the work in securing the nation's voting systems. I look forward to hearing from EEC staff and panelists about the agency's election technology programs today, and I want to recognize the testing and certification team who have worked tirelessly to get us to this point. I'll conclude by thanking in advance the EEC staff who are presenting today. These exciting programs, it's great to hear from the incredible staff who have been working so hard to get us here. Thank you. I'll turn it back to Chairman.
Thank you, Director Schlitz, for those remarks, and thank you, Commissioners. With that, I'll invite our first panel up today. Our first panel today is on the experiences of participants during the first federal electronic poll book test campaign. To start, I would like to welcome them, and I'll introduce them as they come up. So we have Liz Beatrice, who serves as an election technology specialist for the Election Supporting Technology Evaluation Program and has been with the EAC since June of 2023. As an ESTEP specialist, Ms. Beatrice is responsible for managing all projects and communications related to the Voluntary Electronic Pollbook Certification Program, including the electronic pollbook test campaigns and requirements development. Also, Mr. Michael Santos is the Voting System Test Laboratory Director for SLI compliance. He has over 35 years in the quality assurance and test industry and has been part of the SLI compliance Vistal team since 2006. His experience includes testing a multitude of voting and electronic pollbook manufacturers and technologies in the election industry, as well as working with governing bodies, including the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, Federal Voting Assistance Program, several Secretary of State offices and election boards, and international election agencies. And finally, Mr. Steele Shippey serves as the Chief Strategy Officer for No Inc., where he manages product innovation and oversees regulatory compliance. Prior to his work at No Inc., Steele led public affairs and communications initiatives in Missouri state government, including the governor's office and the Secretary of State's office. Welcome to you all, and thank you again for joining us. With that, I'd like to turn it over for some opening remarks. Ms. Beatrice, if you would start us off.
Thank you, Chairman Hovland and Vice Chair Palmer and Commissioners Hicks and McCormick for allowing me to present to you today in this important discussion on the EAC's Voluntary Electronic Pollbook Certification Program. As the Chairman mentioned, my name is Elizabeth Beatrice, and I serve as an Election Technology Specialist on the EAC's Election Supporting Technology Evaluation Program. In this role, I have had the privilege of leading the evaluation of the first system to undergo certification in this new initiative. Today marks a significant milestone, not just for the EAC, but for election officials, voters, and the broader election community. It represents a major leap forward in modernizing election processes while enhancing security, accessibility, reliability, and public confidence in election technology that facilitates their elections. This program was not built overnight. The EAC has been working diligently since 2021 to develop a comprehensive framework for electronic pollbook certification. In 2023, we launched a pilot program to refine our approach and ensure the process was practical for real-world implementation. This effort culminated in the official launch of a full program in 2024, and today we stand on the verge of another historic moment, the certification of the first electronic pollbook in 2025. As we know, roughly 84% of jurisdictions across the U.S. already utilize e-pollbooks, which makes this program even more impactful. The certification of these systems is crucial for the continued modernization of our election infrastructure and ensuring that we meet the growing needs of the election officials and voters alike. Unlike traditional testing and certification programs, this initiative is uniquely designed to be both rigorous yet flexible, recognizing the rapidly evolving landscape of election supporting technologies. It strikes a critical balance between security and usability, ensuring that election officials have access to trusted, thoroughly tested solutions while still allowing for innovation. For years, Congress, election officials, and other stakeholders have demanded a clear and consistent standard for electronic pollbooks. Today, I am proud to present this significant deliverable in response to that need. What started as a concept years ago has now become a reality, made possible through the dedication and collaboration of over 30 distinct stakeholder groups across the election community. This includes technical experts, state and local jurisdictions, electronic pollbook manufacturers, election organizations, and members of the public. The certification process in itself is no small undertaking. Manufacturers, both commercial and in-house, who voluntarily enter this program must demonstrate their compliance with more than 100 stringent requirements. They undergo an intensive 7-phase testing process before they can achieve certification. This program is a testament to the EAC's ongoing commitment to election security and integrity, and I look forward to discussing its implementation, benefits, and future direction with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beatrice. Mr. Santos.
Thank you to the EAC for having me here today. I am Michael Santos, Director of the EAC Accredited Voting System Test Lab, VSTL at SLI Compliance. SLI Compliance has worked with the EAC since 2006, testing voting systems for compliance to the Voluntary Voting System Guidelines, the VVSG. With expansion of EAC oversight via implementation of the ESTEP program that now includes e-poll books, SLI is excited to be a participant in this important expansion. SLI believes that federal oversight of election system components is a vital function in providing confidence to the voting public that our elections are safe, secure, and accurate. The ESTEP program, with its voluntary electronic poll book certification requirements, VEP-BCR standard, brings a level of maturity to the e-poll book sector, much as the VVSG standard did for voting systems. The EAC provides a compliance environment that brings more structure and rigor than what you normally see in a commercial environment. Processes and procedures that are often a bit undefined or treated as common knowledge in the commercial sector are required to be defined and documented by the manufacturer, which leads to a more robust implementation. The requirements within the e-poll book standard creates a known baseline that jurisdictions and the public can view as the standard is posted on the EAC.gov website and see that a robust and meaningful set of requirements are in place, which any or all systems going through the certification process are subject to, such that any system that earns the EAC certificate can be considered a well-tested system. I look forward to our dialogue on this panel this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Santos. Mr. Shippey.
Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. Thank you for inviting No Inc. to join in today's conversation. I'm Steele Shippey, the Chief Strategy Officer for No Inc. I'm honored to represent our company and discuss the latest achievements of our flagship product, PollPad, and the broader impact of the Election Supporting Technology Evaluation Program. It's a privilege to share our perspective on achieving this historic milestone. No Inc's PollPad, version 3.6, is the first electronic poll book in the nation to earn full accreditation and certification under the EAC's Voluntary Electronic Poll Book Certification Program. This significant achievement establishes a new benchmark for security, transparency, and accessibility in elections, underscoring No Inc's position as America's most trusted poll book provider. This isn't just a victory for us, it's a step forward for secure, transparent, and accessible election technology throughout America. Let's take a step back to 2011. In St. Louis, Missouri, our founder and owner, Scott Leindecker, who along with his daughter Piper are here today, Scott previously served as the former elections director for the city of St. Louis and recognized a problem. The voter check-in process was cumbersome, slow, and needed modernization. Scott's vision led to the creation of No Inc's PollPad, built on the reliable Apple iPad. Scott's solution, an all-in-one tablet-based system built with the end user in mind. There's an app for that. It wasn't easy, and Scott didn't just settle for the status quo. He pioneered a new playbook. His vision made No Inc. the first manufacturer in the world to tackle the challenge of delivering an electronic poll book on off-the-shelf, tablet-based hardware. We didn't stop there. No Inc. became the first to scan a driver's license on an iPad, setting a new standard for efficiency and innovation in election technology. Since the beginning, PollPad has redefined the experience for both voters and poll workers by streamlining the check-in process, enhancing data accuracy, and simplifying election administration. Today, as a result, poll workers tap with confidence and voters move through lines with ease. The impact is undeniable. In November of 2024 presidential election, 36 million voters across 29 states, that's 1 in 4 Americans, checked in with the PollPad. From small towns to the nation's largest cities, we're there ensuring the integrity of voter check-in from coast to coast. Security is at the heartbeat of everything that we do. PollPad was created with a security-first mindset. Our certification journey began in 2014 in the state of Indiana, where we were among the first manufacturers to meet testing and product standards at a state level. Fast forward to today, PollPad is certified in 12 states, and as a company, we reinvest over $1 million annually to fortify PollPad's security framework. What makes us different? Our team consists of former election officials who have lived the demands of Election Day. Their professional experience helps craft tools and solutions that solve real problems. Today, the PollPad features over 700 custom configurations, our patented built-in ID scanner, and a solution that enables election administrators to effectively create their own electronic poll book without needing additional hardware or software. As a family-owned American company headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri, with entirely U.S.-based product development and support, No Inc. isn't just proud to be America's most trusted poll book provider. We're committed to earning that trust every day. This EAC certification achieved through the ESTEP program crowns our efforts. It is a seal of trust that raises the bar for the entire election industry. Today is not our endpoint, it's a step forward. We encourage all providers and manufacturers of electronic poll books to adopt this standard, coming together behind a voluntary federal benchmark to enhance voter confidence and product security across the country. Thanks to the EAC for your leadership in addressing the needs of local election officials by developing this framework for federal electronic poll book certification. Look forward to today's discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Shippey, and thank you all for your opening comments. We'll now turn to questions, and I'll kick it off. In some of the opening comments, it was referenced that we heard about the need for a program like this from members of Congress in a bipartisan fashion. We heard from secretaries of state and other election officials. We also heard about the potential challenges to the marketplace of potentially having 50 different certification programs across the country, and the potential burden on that if states, not only for states to maintain such programs, but also for manufacturers to comply with those. But so much of this was theoretical until today. Now we officially have our first federally certified electronic poll book. And with that in mind, I was hoping each of you, from your varying perspectives, could talk about the importance of a federal certification program here, and how it may better serve voters and the broader election community. Mr. Shippey, give you the honors with the official first certified poll book. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. Quite simply, we believe that trust equals transparency. In order to earn that trust in the industry, we have taken every opportunity to work alongside election administrators and agencies responsible for ensuring the security of electronic poll books across the country since the beginning. Throughout each step and phase of the technology's adoption and growth throughout the industry, EPBs have matured. However, the fragmentation of standards place an undue burden on states to maintain them and on manufacturers to comply with the patchwork of these requirements. From our perspective, the importance lies on creating a unified, reliable standard that enhances efficiency and trust in this technology. This benefits voters by ensuring smoother, more secure voting experiences and supports the broader election community by streamlining and processing, which fosters consistency. This federal certification process ensures that vendors like us meet and exceed best practices in data security, integrity, and system resilience. Beyond certification, we remain committed to aligning with industry standards such as NIST, OWASP, and CIS benchmarks, just to name a few. However, we also have a need for flexibility, as mentioned previously, to keep on how these standards are applied. We need to ensure that there's support for rapidly updated operating systems like the Apple iOS. They're making additional announcements today, which frequently release security updates. Those security updates, while crucial, but we urge the program to allow these updates to be implemented without requiring burdensome testing that delays access to the latest, most secure process. Locking in vendors to specific versions of software, for example, can hinder our ability to apply critical security patches quickly. And we encourage discussion and approach on more agility to the certification process for those security fixes and updates to our code base. Vendors should not be disincentivized from addressing vulnerabilities due to excessive lab costs, lengthy review processes. A streamlined, rapid deployment and a review framework would better enable us to respond to emerging threats while maintaining compliance. Balancing oversight with practical adaptability, this certification program can continue to evolve, ensuring election technology remains secure, resilient, and responsive.
Thank you for that. I know that all along this process, we've been aware that we can learn from the testing and certification of voting systems, but also that technologies like e-poll books are different, and we need to keep that in mind and consider that. So appreciate those comments. Mr. Santos, from the lab perspective, if you could share a little bit.
Certainly. I think that currently nationwide, there's a lot of variation in how e-poll books are reviewed and certified. I think that's what makes the EAC program so important, as it addresses the e-poll books at a federal level. This creates a base for which everyone can feel confidence that systems that go through this process has a defined level of robustness, which if you review the standards, you can see has a high level of thoroughness in areas such as functionality, accessibility, and security. From a lab perspective, this broadens our scope of contribution to the election community, which we are excited to be a part of. For the broader community, I think this should give confidence that elections are being protected at key points of the election environment.
Thank you for that, Ms. Beatrice.
Thank you for the question, Chairman Hovland. Knowing certification, the overall program, is a major milestone for the EAC. It reinforces our agency's role in setting a national standard for security, accessibility, and reliability of election supporting technologies, much like Mike and Steele have already mentioned. For us, it validates that the certification program we've been working so hard to develop has proven to be effective. It shows that our efforts to enhance security and ensure the integrity of election technology are moving in the right direction. For the broader community, this is a signal that the certification program is not just conceptual. It's both operational and effective, and it's producing systems that meet the federal standards we've set. States considering adopting federal standards for e-poll books now have a concrete example of what certification entails. This is helping them inform future decisions in their own testing programs. Having a certified system on the market also provides an added level of confidence when making purchasing decisions, especially for jurisdictions that may not have the resources to conduct their own testing internally. Knowing certification also sets a precedent for other manufacturers, showing that certification is both achievable and valuable. It encourages more manufacturers to engage with the program, ultimately leading to greater competition, innovation, and improved security standards in the industry. This first certification is a win for public confidence in election supporting technology, demonstrating that election systems are undergoing rigorous independent testing. It helps reinforce transparency and accountability, as voters can trust that the technology used at polling places has met high standards. We expect that as more manufacturers undergo certification, the overall quality, security, and accessibility of electronic poll books will improve, benefiting elections across the country.
Thank you, Ms. Beatrice. Vice Chair Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank you, Mr. Shippey, for your powerful opening comments. Mr. Santos, you as well. I mean, the fact that SLI does a lot of testing for VBS 1 and 2, it really confirms that we're moving in the right direction. At least, we're trying to do this right. So I think we're moving in the right direction. So the question really is for you, Mr. Shippey and Mr. Santos, given your extensive experience with various certification projects, how do the EAC's electronic poll book certification requirements compare? And could you elaborate both on the pilot and the certification perspectives? Want to go first, Mr. Santos? You can go second if you want. It's all right.
First is fine. Both the pilot and the formal certification program have introduced manufacturers to being in a compliance environment as opposed to a commercial environment, which I think will help lead the manufacturers in a more structured and rigorous development approach. The pilot was beneficial such that it allowed the EAC to analyze where requirements were applicable versus what wasn't across the different systems. I think there were, 6 or 7 different e-poll books in the pilot, and I think there was a really well-rounded set of manufacturers coming in with different perspectives and different technologies. So that really lent itself to proving out the pilot program. The initial certification helped to prove that the updated requirement set is a valid set. I think there's still a little bit more tweaking that could be done, but it's significantly more robust and applicable than what we even saw with the pilot requirement set. I think the EAC requirement set has evolved to be well-rounded, incorporating many requirements that individual states are going to be looking for if they're not already. Some requirements are common to all states, while some requirements may touch on areas that states may have not focused on to date. I think this provides a good baseline for states such that it will reduce the scope of testing they will need to do in order to be compliant with any of their pertinent state regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Shippey.
Thank you. We can say with confidence that the EAC's EPB standards and requirements stand out as more rigorous compared to many state level standards. The EAC leans heavily on industry recommendations such as those from NIST, which adds a layer of depth and credibility and reflects a commitment to security that goes beyond what we typically see at the state level. Rather than reinventing the wheel, the EAC builds on established standards, which we found to be a practical and effective approach. Looking at the transition from the pilot to the full certification, the process required us to make a few adjustments. The certification phase demanded a higher level of thoroughness, fleshing out requirements in greater detail than the pilot. This shift sparked extensive dialogue, often requiring us to seek clarification to ensure our understanding is aligned with the EAC's expectations. That back and forth was valuable as it refined our approach and strengthened the final product. In comparison, most state certification programs tend to prioritize functional requirements tailored to their specific laws, like ensuring the EPB can process a voter, flag an expired ID where required, or meet other election day use cases. Some states dive deeper into security, but it varies widely. Their focus is typically on practical functionality, making sure the system complies with state regulations and handles real-world voter check-in scenarios effectively. The EAC, however, takes a broader approach. Its functional requirements, while foundational, such as preventing a voter from checking in twice, don't delve into the nuanced state-specific legal details. Instead, the EAC emphasizes a robust baseline of security and operational integrity, which sets its certification apart. From both a pilot and certification perspectives, the EAC process was demanding yet constructive. It pushed us to refine our system beyond what many states require, aligning it with the rigorous industry-backed standards while still leaving room for state-level customization. That balance is what makes this such a strong framework for EPBs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Hicks.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Santos, building on what the Vice Chair stated on the requirements, SLI's compliance has been testing voting, testing electronic poll books for a number of years. And based on that experience and your experience being there since 2006, can you describe how those test campaigns might be similar or different than the EAC's voluntary electronic poll book certification program?
Excuse me, the EAC test campaign has more structure to it than most state campaigns. EAC provides oversight with weekly meetings and review of any issues that might arise during the test campaign cycle. This helps provide consistency not only throughout that particular project, but the program as a whole. At SLI, we strive to maintain consistency between every poll book test campaign we conduct, but from a program level, there can be differences between test labs on how requirements are interpreted and examined against a system. So the EAC oversight helps to maintain the needed consistency throughout the program amongst each test campaign.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is for you, Mr. Shippey. Integrity and security of our elections is crucial. As you may know, accessibility is also a directive of the Help America Vote Act. Most states currently do not require accessibility testing for electronic poll books. Can you share your experiences with this process at the federal level and highlight any successful outcomes that you experienced?
Commissioner, in most states, accessibility testing for electronic poll books isn't a requirement. California stands out as the exception. At the federal level, the EAC certification brought accessibility into sharp focus. This experience pushed us to evaluate our poll pad application through an accessibility lens, which was both challenging and rewarding. It forced us to refine our approach, tailoring our documentation and improving how we communicate accessibility features to customers. Now we're better equipped to guide poll workers on operating the system in ways to make it more usable for individuals with disabilities. PollPad was designed with usability first. Recognizing the diverse skill set of poll workers and the complexity of voter interactions in the field, our goal has always been to keep technology intuitive and user-friendly for both poll workers and voters. The EAC process elevated this commitment by requiring us to conduct sophisticated usability testing with a third-party independent agency. This wasn't just a check-the-box exercise. It involved rigorous independent testing for a range of needs, including low vision, blindness, and dexterity or mobility impairments. As a result, we've updated and expanded our documentation to better highlight accessibility features and their practical use, drawing from lessons learned. This process didn't just meet federal standards, it enhanced our product, making it more inclusive and easier to deploy.
Mr. Chair, if I might add on to my question.
Yes.
When you talk about accessibility, are you talking just about voters, or are you also talking about the poll workers, or
Both.
both?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner McCormick. Coming back to Mr. Stantos and Mr. Shippey, again, obviously we've acknowledged that this is the first certification of its kind for the EAC's voluntary electronic poll book certification program, and so we understand what that means. We understand that this is a learning process, both for the manufacturers, for the labs, for us at the EAC, and that as systems are submitted, there'll be some levels of remediation before certification can be granted. I was hoping that you could talk about sort of what you've learned from that process that could help other manufacturers and the labs prepare for this during future testing efforts. And if you could talk about, Mr. Shippey, you mentioned specifically how we can look at minor changes and modifications and make that process more streamlined. So I'd also welcome any thoughts along that. If you can start, that'd be great.
Great. For us, throughout the certification process, the remediation component was relatively light. Our app didn't need extensive changes, but it still offered valuable insights. The biggest lesson we learned is the importance of clear and precise requirements. Vague standards can leave too much room for interpretation, leading to misalignment between us as vendors and the testing labs. Without clarity up front, it's hard to anticipate what adjustments might be needed, which can slow things down. Since we were among the first to go through this process, it's no surprise that some of these requirements only became fully defined as we engaged. For instance, minor remediations tied to NIST requirements, we found that the vagueness made it trickier to nail down what was expected until we were deep into testing. This trial and error phase flushed out the standards, but it also highlighted an opportunity for improvement. To help ourselves, other manufacturers, and test labs prepare for future efforts, we'd emphasize starting with well-defined, concise requirements. That clarity would reduce guesswork and make the process smoother from the outset. As for streamlining those minor changes and modifications, we would suggest, as previously mentioned, a more a more agile framework. Once the core requirements are clear, allow vendors and labs to address small tweaks like those we encountered with faster, less formal review cycles. This could mean predefined categories for minor updates that don't trigger full retesting or recertification, cutting down on the time and cost without compromising rigor. Our experience showed us that the foundation is solid, but refining how we handle these adjustments could make the program even more efficient for everyone involved.
Thank you for that, Mr. Santos.
Similar to what Mr. Shippey said, on the manufacturer side, I'd say that having a complete understanding of each requirement and how it pertains to your system is vital. If you have any question on a requirement, rather than just deciding a path of implementation on your own, ask the EAC at ESTEP or your lab. We are happy to tell you our interpretation of any requirement. Also, testing each requirement to the pertinent portion and portions of your system so that you know that you meet the requirement throughout your system. This is something that we've seen on the voting side as well. Over the years, whenever new manufacturers come in, it's just a learning process for them. But I think the best advice I can give is ask if you have a question on a requirement. On the lab side, early on in the project, once the lab has had a chance to analyze the system and assign requirements, doing a full walkthrough of the requirements with both the EAC and the manufacturer will be very beneficial. It kind of lends itself towards the manufacturer truly understanding the requirements and being confident that they've implemented it correctly. I think will help all stakeholders agree on the full scope. Also, testing the most potentially problematic requirements earlier would provide more time for resolution. So I think, the labs just need to be more tactical in their approach of identifying the requirements against the system and trying to get the most potentially problematic ones tested early on in the project. That way the manufacturer has more time to mitigate any issues that are found. With regard to minor changes and modifications, I think each process, as outlined in the program manual, is what is needed in a compliance atmosphere. I think the key is in how it gets implemented. For each process, it is imperative that the manufacturer has all needed data as outlined in the program manual for proper determination with proper coordination between the manufacturer, the EAC, and the test lab. The actual review can be streamlined to be as efficient as possible. Once all needed information is provided to EAC and the test lab, then EAC and the lab need to coordinate analysis of the change or modification, determine what requirements from the standards are affected, and how best to examine the system in regards that or those requirements are being addressed. All three entities working together can help to streamline the process for maximum efficiency while still meeting the necessities of the compliance community. Currently, just kind of make an analogy to the voting system program, we really look at three different types of certifications, right? An initial certification, which is full testing of a system, but then we also have minor changes and ECOs. And I guess like looking at which one that is, it really determines the scope of the project. And I feel like that the minor changes and modifications within the EAC program can be tailored to e-poll book needs, being more reactive and more timely in meeting timelines that are necessitated by a jurisdiction having some critical need. I think we can see pretty quick turnaround times that still meet the needs of the compliance industry.
Thank you for that, Vice Chair Palmer.
And thank you, Mr. Sanders. I really appreciate that conversation regarding minor changes and how we respond to that. My question is for Ms. Beatrice and Mr. Shippey. As you know, some states, including North Carolina, for example, have begun drafting legislation to require that manufacturers meet federal requirements for electronic poll books, similar to the VVSG, or in some cases part of the RFP process. And I think that actually seen some counties that's starting to sprout up. How can the EAC assist states and manufacturers to engage in that process? And from your perspective, can manufacturers prepare, as states consider implementing federal certification requirements? And we'll start with you, Mr. Shippey, and then we'll go to Ms. Beatrice.
Our hope would be that to continue to see the adoption and inclusion of those federal standards, that the ESTEP program has outlined an RFP process. And as you mentioned, we've already engaged with jurisdictions that have included forms or complete or partial elements of the EAC standards in their RFPs in the first part of 2025. And I think also this speaks to the fact that like many states lack the authority and resources and expertise to develop and test such comprehensive standards on their own, something the EAC, alongside with their testing partners, is uniquely equipped to handle. The EAC can assist and encourage states to adopt its certification as a baseline for security and accessibility, allowing them to layer on state-specific functional requirements that reflect their unique jurisdictional laws. This partnership with the EAC and local state governments would lighten the load on state resources while ensuring consistent, high-quality standards across all jurisdictions. As we previously mentioned, we've noticed that states tend to prioritize those functional requirements, ensuring that EPBs meet those local needs. And state and local election officials shouldn't be expected to be security experts. Thus, the need for the EAC to assist in bridging that gap in the industry stepping in as a vital resource, certifying security, hardware stability, and accessibility while states focus on tailoring and functioning to their functional laws. This division of labor leverages the EAC strengths and lets states concentrate on what they know best. For manufacturers preparing for this shift, we'd recommend aligning products to the EAC standards proactively. The certification's rigor exceeds most state standards and expectations, and by meeting this, it positions the industry well for emerging requirements. It also streamlines efforts by reducing the need to chase those patchwork of state-specific regulatory rules, which are costly and inefficient. The EAC could further support the program by continuing your work and promoting the program to states as you have done over the past few years. Over time, these unified EPP requirements under the EAC's umbrella benefit all. States get secure and stable and accessible tools, while manufacturers gain a clear and more efficient path to compliance.
So in your opening statement, you said fragmentation of standards. What we're trying to do is provide more baseline and unified standards on this.
Yeah.
Ms. Beatrice, what are your thoughts?
Thank you for the question, Vice Chair. I think the EAC plays a critical role in assisting both states and manufacturers as they navigate the integration of federal requirements for electronic poll books. For states considering the implementation of federal standards, the EAC can provide detailed manuals, technical guidelines, and best practices to help them incorporate federal certification requirements into their existing testing processes. We can also assist states in drafting legislative proposals to align with voluntary federal standards, ensuring a smooth and effective transition into state law and regulation. From the manufacturer's perspective, I think there are a few things they can do now to get ahead of these requirements. First, I would recommend thoroughly reviewing the program manual and electronic poll book requirements to ensure that their products already meet the federal standards before entering the program. Second, they could also invest in innovation by developing secure, resilient, and accessible electronic poll books that anticipate future needs. At the EAC, I want to reiterate that we maintain an open door policy for both states and manufacturers. We encourage them to engage with us at any time, whether they have questions about the process or just need general guidance. Our goal is to work together and make this transition as smooth as possible, both for states looking to adopt federal requirements and for manufacturers getting ready to meet these standards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Palmer. Commissioner Hicks.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Beatrice, what role do you see for the public feedback and user experience in shaping the future standards and requirements for electronic poll book certification?
That's a great question. Thank you, Commissioner Hicks. Public feedback and user experience are essential in shaping the future of electronic poll book testing and certification on the federal level. When developing the program, ESTEP took a serious look at stakeholder feedback and real election experiences, paying close attention to the voter concerns. These insights help us understand the real-world challenges that jurisdictions face and ensure that our standards address them effectively. Election officials, poll workers, and voters are the ones who interact with these systems firsthand, so their insights are invaluable in identifying what works well and where improvements are needed. One of the key aspects of this certification program is ensuring that electronic poll books are not only secure, but also reliable and practical and user-friendly in a real-world election environment. By incorporating direct feedback from those who use the systems in the field, we can refine our standards to better address accessibility, ease of use, and operational efficiency. Additionally, as technology and election processes evolve, public engagement will help ensure that certification requirements remain relevant and responsive to the needs of election officials and voters. We're committed to transparency and actively encourage feedback through public comment periods, stakeholder engagement sessions, and direct communication with election jurisdictions. Moving forward, I see an even greater opportunity to incorporate the structured feedback mechanisms, whether through manufacturer meetings, online roundtables, or ongoing collaboration with states and local election officials, just to ensure that the program meets the highest standards for both security and usability.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Hicks. Commissioner McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is for all three of you, Mr. Shippey, Mr. Santos, and Ms. Beatrice. What are the best practices for ensuring data security and integrity during the electronic poll book certification process? Also, looking to the future, how might this certification program mitigate potential cyber threats? We'll start with you, Ms. Beatrice.
That's a great question. Thank you, Commissioner McCormick. Ensuring data security and integrity during the certification process remains a top priority. At the EAC, we take a multi-level security approach to proactively identify, mitigate, and prevent potential cyber threats before these systems are ever deployed in the field. Before formal testing even begins, we require EAC-accredited test labs to conduct thorough penetration testing on the system. This controlled process is carried out by qualified security personnel at our labs, who simulate real-world cyber attacks on the system in a safe and responsible manner. The goal is not to compromise the system, but rather to identify and remediate any critical vulnerabilities discovered before the system is evaluated for certification. By addressing these risks at an early stage, election officials and the public can have confidence that only systems with a strong security posture enter the program. After penetration testing, the system undergoes evaluation to 48 distinct security requirements, covering multiple layers of protection, including system resilience, access controls and authentication, network security, software code security, logging and audit capabilities, and supply chain risk management. Beyond certification, the EAC plays a crucial role in strengthening election security nationwide by offering best practices to state and local election officials through detailed program manuals, baseline requirements, and recommendations for pre-election testing. As cyber threats evolve, the EAC will continuously evaluate baseline requirements for security testing under this program to make sure they align with the latest security best practices and emerging risks. By implementing these best practices and fostering strong collaboration between states, manufacturers, and federal partners, the EAC ensures that electronic poll books that enter this program meet the highest security standards while safeguarding the integrity of U.S. elections.
Concerning the requirements, SLI believes that the practices for ensuring data security and integrity demand a comprehensive layered approach, also known as defense in depth, to security. This involves rigorous access controls that manage both programmatic and physical access to the system, employing methods like multi-factor authentication and detailed access logs to ensure only authorized personnel can and have interacted with election systems. Physical security measures must protect critical infrastructure components from unauthorized access and tampering, incorporating secure facilities for storage as well as hosting back-end systems, and tamper-evident devices, locks, seals, screws, etc. Systems integrity is maintained through regular software updates, as certification efforts are known to lock devices to a point in time, the application of patches and protective measures against unauthorized modification. Network and telecommunications security is critical and must include robust defenses such as firewalls, encryption, and secure communication protocols to safeguard data in transit. The architecture of the software itself must be designed with security as a foundational principle, which includes secure coding practices, modularity, and the principle of least privilege. Comprehensive logging systems are essential for creating an undisputable audit trail of all system and user activities, supporting effective monitoring and rapid incident response. Finally, supply chain risk management ensures the security and reliability of all system components, assessing risks from suppliers and vendors to prevent potential supply chain attacks. This defense in depth approach not only secures the system on election day, but also throughout its entire life cycle, from initial design through deployment and operational phases. In regards to mitigation of potential cyber threats, the EAC can play a pivotal role in testing the potential cyber threats through comprehensive security-focused best practices requirements testing. The EAC can guide and support election officials in adopting industry-standard security measures, particularly those outlined in the e-poll book testing requirements, and advocate for the implementation of these best practices. EAC can establish and encourage the responsible disclosure of vulnerabilities, ensuring they are ethically reported and remedied promptly. The EAC, by acting as a central repository for information, helps to disseminate critical information swiftly across various jurisdictions. Additionally, the EAC's rigorous system certification processes helps to ensure that covered systems meet high security standards before deployment. Providing continuous education and training resources also builds the cybersecurity expertise of election officials nationwide, enhancing the resilience of the democratic infrastructure against cyber threats and promoting a secure and trustworthy election process.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Mr. Shippey.
Yeah, to respond to that, thank you, Commissioner. I think the key word is agility. Modern software deployment thrives on rapid iterations to meet customer needs and jurisdictional shifts. It can't be static because we're often met with a patchwork of software updates that are required even within a single year. We've spent years refining this approach to data security and integrity, and best practices start with a layered defense. Encrypt everything, data at rest and in transit, so voter information stays locked tight. We lean on NIST guidelines to enforce strong authentication, think multi-factor for device access, and rigorous access controls to limit who can touch the system. Regular penetration testing and vulnerability scans are non-negotiable. They expose weak spots before bad actors can. During certification, we found that documenting every security control meticulously, down to how we hash voter data and scrub logs, keep us aligned with the EAC's expectations and proves our integrity under scrutiny. Integrity is just as crucial. We build checksums and audit trails into our poll pad system and software to verify that voter records aren't tampered with, whether it's during check-in or sync with the election management systems. Redundancy helps too. Offline modes and local backups mean data stays intact even if connectivity drops. The certification process stress tests this. It demands we show how our system handles failures, rejects unauthorized changes, and recovers fast. Another area to review and consider is stress testing at scale. EPBs must handle real-world election pressures, processing thousands of voter check-ins and various system demands, to name a few, but replicating these scenarios in a lab is tricky. We'd welcome a discussion on better simulating these conditions, perhaps through a standardized scenario or live pilots to validate performance under stress. Combining this with the agile certification process would strike the right balance, robust enough to ensure stability and security, and flexible enough to keep pace with the evolving needs of election administrators nationwide. Looking ahead, the certification program is needed for mitigating cyber threats by setting a high uniform bar like the NIST-aligned security baked into every certified EPB. It cuts through the patchwork of state standards and leaves gaps for attackers to exploit. The EAC's focus on usability and security testing forces us to harden our system against evolving risks like ransomware or DDoS attacks that could disrupt Election Day. Future proofing comes from agility. As threats shift, we need a process that allows us to respond without decertifying. If the EAC pairs its rigor with a streamlined, updated framework, it'll keep EPBs ahead of this evolving landscape of threats. For No Inc., that means PollPad stays as a fortress, secure today, ready for tomorrow's threats, and trusted by election officials across the country.
Thank you, Mr. Shippey. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think we have time for possibly one more quick round. I have a question, but I'll defer to my colleagues if you all have one.
Sure, I have one. I appreciate your comments, Mr. Shippey. I think from an former election administrator, I think just the review process that we did at the state is not all poll books are created equal. And sometimes without that process, a process taking place, the locals get products that may not work for them inadvertently. And that's a big waste of money, lack of security. And so I really appreciate the efforts you're doing and highlighting some of the security measures that we need to be testing for. The question I have is really, maybe we're thinking long-term here, but when you have VVSG 1 and 2 and you have manufacturers, usually issues that arise always comes down to lack of communication. I don't know what it is. We have meetings, we have discussions, that still lack of communication. And I heard some good discussions from Mr. Santos about how that's important, and I think Liz mentioned that as well. So I'd like all of you have an opportunity to, how can we better communicate expectations to electronic poll book manufacturers. What is a way to do that as part of the testing process? Because I think that's going to be the key to success, and it's always a challenge. So everyone can weigh in. That would be great.
I'll take a run at that. Thanks, Commissioner. I think it was discussed previously about kind of the meeting cadence that was set up by the EAC. I applaud them for that that standard of communication. We agree that that was fostered well and managed by the EAC staff in a professional manner. Thinking beyond just the certification period, for us as a manufacturer, applies to Apple, right? New iOS comes out regularly. You have a new hardware that's released on a annual basis. Often, I think regular, more interaction with us, not just a one and done in the certification process, and expect us to come back to the table. I think understanding the industry needs, understanding the landscape of off-the-shelf hardware that's being introduced into the marketplace, and having more regular scheduled interaction would be beneficial to the program, to ESTEP, and the broader scope of the systems that you guys are looking to continue to add into this system.
Sure. I think, and this is something that we did on the voting side with voting manufacturers. SLI, we created kind of a welcome package for new manufacturers where we took a lot of the pertinent requirements for a manufacturer from the program manual as well as from the standards themselves and put them into just a quick checklist overview of what the expectation is from them. I think the program manual and the standards are very thorough, but there's just a lot to be read. And I think sometimes things get a little bit lost within that. So I think, going back to SLI, we'll be looking at creating a similar kind of package, kind of just taking everything that's pertinent to a new manufacturer from the program manual as well as the standards and say, here's some high-level bullet points that you definitely want to be considering and, think about it, come up with some questions, come back to us, and let's work through it. I think that would have been beneficial in this project with No Ink, and I think moving forward, just getting everybody, creating a good baseline expectation for all parties.
Teachers.
It's a great question. Communication has been something that's been what we wanted to look forward to incorporating in this program from the very start. As a matter of fact, from the pilot, we heard from all 7 manufacturers that we need more communication. So that's why we implemented from the very start of this test campaign weekly meetings. And to Steele's point earlier, I think it's even important to have a more open meeting cadence. Whenever you need to meet with us, we'll be open to do that. I think it's also a multi-level approach to have more meetings outside of the test campaign, like pre-testing consultations before you even come to our program to communicate any concerns you have about the requirements beforehand and make sure all expectations are clarified before entering the program. Additionally, we can also have more manufacturer meetings to gain input from people who haven't even considered entering the program at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Hicks?
Thank you. This is for all of you. We understand the turnaround time when the state test campaigns are abbreviated. Knowing that this is the first federal test campaign for electronic poll books, what added testing for usability and security are out there? And what anticipated improvements or updates would you add to the testing and certification process? Mr. Santos, do you want to start?
Certainly. With the poll book process being based on the voting system process, which has been in place and improved upon over the last 18 years, I think the process itself is pretty robust. I think that with this being something new for e-poll book manufacturers, being in more of a compliance environment as opposed to commercial, it's going to be a learning experience the first time through for probably all of them. So given that, I think kind of going back to what we just talked about, I think maybe more upfront guidance with them to, sometimes a manufacturer doesn't know what they don't know. And I think we can go back and look at some of the requirements and some of the requirements in the program manual and maybe kind of clarify for them what the true meaning is for each of those line items. We even see this right now on the voting side with VBSG 2.0. We know with a new requirement set, even seasoned EAC participants are sometimes struggling with some of the requirements and some of the items in the program manual. So I think it kind of behooves everybody to kind of maybe take that step back, look at what is the true intent of everything that's being spelled out, and just making sure that we all have a common baseline.
Ms. Beatrice?
That's a great question. Thank you. Given the abbreviated turnaround time on state test campaigns, we do recognize the need for continuous improvement to increase agility in our own program. From the EAC perspective, I would anticipate the following key improvements. First and foremost, as we kind of just mentioned on the last question, communication remains the most critical part of all these test campaigns. We want to make sure there's an ongoing and open dialogue between the EAC, the manufacturer, and the test lab, just to make sure all issues are addressed promptly and effectively. And then second, we are working to refine the program manual as well, just to add clearer guidance before the manufacturers can enter the program. We had a few lessons learned from this program that we'll be implementing in the forthcoming iteration. Third, we're looking at ways to optimize testing procedures overall. As I kind of mentioned earlier, those pre-testing consultations will be helpful in supporting any forthcoming testing changes that occur out of a result of editing the program requirements, as well as refining the testing requirements overall just to ensure clarity, and then even incorporating automation where it makes sense to help speed things up without cutting corners. And then finally, I think just overall, our goal should be commitment to learning and adapting. This is the first test campaign for electronic poll books on the federal level, and as we know, there are going to be improvements in the future. We're actively analyzing lessons learned and making adjustments as needed. We'll also be conducting exit interviews with every manufacturer and test lab after every test campaign to ensure that all feedback can be considered without updating or when updating requirements. At the end of the day, I think our main goal is to ensure this process is both effective and manageable for both states, manufacturers, and even for election officials, while keeping security and accessibility at the front and center.
Thank you. Mr. Shippey?
Yeah, to further elaborate on previous comments and statements, I think that going back to that, striking the balance between agility and the rigid nature of needed certification standards. For us, it's been an evolution, a learning curve over the last 14 years in the space of delivering this product. Obviously, as we've discussed, iOS, Apple's firmware for us often changes, on a regular cadence, right? For needed security improvements, or they're just updating on their end. Well, that impacts us and impacts the deployment of our systems. Different states react to those updates currently, and again, a patchwork of how that's moved forward. I think defining that and clarifying how those firmware adjustments or updates are applied across the country will deliver clarity to customers. We often, our support staff is often met with, should I install the new iOS update on my iPad? Right, we get a lot of calls, and we manage that process through documentation and current customer interaction. But ensuring the certification program matches what the industry is truly feeling and impacted by, to ensure that we're meeting all necessary requirements. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McCormick?
Yeah, this question is for Ms. Beatrice, and feel free, Mr. Santos and Mr. Shippey, to add if you want to. Many states don't have, as we've heard, a testing and certification process in place for these e-poll books. Prior to this now national voluntary program, what were election officials in those states without programs able to rely on in purchasing these systems? How could they ensure that the system they were buying was reliable, secure, and accurate?
That's a really great question, Commissioner McCormick. I believe that, I'm speaking from a state perspective, so I'm focusing from my own perspectives in the past, having worked in Indiana. I think a lot of states look to other states who had certification programs. So, for instance, California has a very robust electronic public certification program, and they've produced a few systems that have been certified to that standard. I know Indiana itself has a reliable certification process, as well as New York and many others. And I think in the past, that's been kind of the standard, just looking to other states and seeing what they've done. And now that we have one baseline standard at the EAC, it'll be nice that states can now look to a federal standard that kind of encompasses all of the different standards that exist on the state level.
You have something to add?
Sure. I'll
Yeah.
just kind of talk through the manufacturer's perspective, obviously, from what jurisdictions or, again, we're certified in 12 states currently, and that's evolved over the 14 years we've been in business, starting with Indiana. Liz mentioned California, New York, and there are also every step of the way for knowing that the industry as or the election community has said, hey, we would encourage you, or here's an opportunity to send your product to testing, whether it's the Idaho Labs, whether it's CAS Rabbit V program, the pilot program, the EAC's pilot program. We have never shied away from that activity, because we believe that, again, that trust equals transparency equation, that if we're not submitting our product for every opportunity that's available to us, then we're not taking full advantage of and giving that confidence to voters and jurisdictions. But additionally, beyond those elements and what we take as a manufacturer internally, there are states that would require robust third-party penetration testing or third-party validation efforts that are required at a state level or jurisdiction. So, and again, that's a patchwork of demands on us as a manufacturer to deal with the varying degrees of compliance needs across the country, and we're grateful that we have a new standard.
I'll just agree with Elizabeth that I think states that historically don't have a certification process of their own rely on other bigger states and to do the heavy lifting for them, and then they just kind of piggyback off of it. And I think that can be a little bit hit and miss, because you don't necessarily know that you're getting the exact same version of a product as what California might have gotten. I mean, maybe there's a minor change in between that's something for your state specifically, or whatever. So I think that's where we really see the benefit from the federal certification. I mean, now any state can go and have that level of comfort and confidence that the system has been tested pretty rigorously to the federal standards. And now, if they have uh, local jurisdictional requirements that need to be checked, that's all they need to look at. So I think it's going to enable some of the smaller states maybe to even implement a certification process, because they don't have a lot to look at. They can look at the EAC standards and then say, okay, what do we look for beyond that? And that's all they have to look at.
I appreciate your answers. I think one of the impetuses for this program was hearing about some of the misses, right? Some of the people who bought products that didn't meet up to what was advertised. So I just wanted to make sure that we understood that this federal program will fill in some of the gaps in a lot of places. So thank you.
And with that, I will bring our first panel to a close. Thank you all for joining us today and for the conversation. And with that, we will take a short break before our second panel, reconvening at 2:30 Eastern Time. Thank you.
decide to do this?
All right, welcome back, and welcome to our second panel. I'll go ahead and introduce our panelists. We've got Wayne Bina, who has served as Nebraska's Deputy Secretary of State 2017. In that capacity, he oversees the Elections Division. He's a former member of the Executive Board of the National Association of State Election Directors. Prior to his service with the state of Nebraska, Wayne served as the Sarpy County Election Commissioner, the state's third largest county, for 8 years. Welcome. Uh, to his right, my left, Daniel Cox is the manager of the EAC's Field Services Program. Mr. Cox is the founding manager of the EAC's Field Services Program. He brings over 10 years of election administration experience to the EAC, both as a consultant in one of the nation's prominent election vendors and as a private consultant. He has experience in all aspects of election administration. And finally, Brian W. Cruz has served as the Douglas County Election Commissioner in Omaha, Nebraska since 2016. He is active in numerous professional organizations, including the EAC Standards Board, the National Association of Counties Subcommittee for Elections, and the Nebraska Association of County Officials as co-chair of the Election Law Committee and Audit Committee. Welcome, and thank you all for being with us today. We're going to start with opening remarks. Mr. Bina, if you could start.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Wayne Bina, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections in the great state of Nebraska. I thank you for the opportunity to testify with my colleague and friend, Douglas County Election Commissioner Brian Cruz, regarding this pilot project. Under the leadership of our Secretary of State, Bob Evnen, the Elections Division has taken great pride in volunteering for various pilot projects with the goal of enhancing the election administration process. From planning the first Albert sensor with a virtual server on the network of our voter registration system, to a project to utilize GIS software in elections, to today's hearing regarding hash validations, Nebraska is a great state to test new ideas. So as not to bury the lead, as you can see from the report that was published, this pilot project was a success with many things that we can take away and improve on. But I would be remiss in not thanking a few key individuals. My Assistant Deputy for Elections, Andrew Buller, should be the one sitting here today. And if not for a previously scheduled commitment, he would be. Andrew was instrumental in convincing me that we should do this pilot, and as well as being the lead on organizing things prior to the field team visiting and being on site during the entire process. Manak Patel from our Information Technology Division was also on site and helped procure all the technology needed to conduct this testing. Our elections vendor, Election System and Software, and their Federal Certification Division, led by Tim Hallett, was very supportive of the pilot and helped with the pre-testing training and guidance from other testing processes that they've been a part of throughout the country. Thank you to Commissioner Cruz and his team for their willingness to participate in this project. Finally, to the EAC Field Services team, we thank you for your work and hope you enjoyed your time in Nebraska more than the other state that you visited. Commissioner Hicks, you missed out. This project validated what we already knew. Our ballot counting equipment, along with our election management software, are operating as they were certified to count and compile results securely and accurately. As we talk more in depth about the project today, I look forward to discussing takeaways and possible alternative methods how this work could be replicated across the country. As you're aware, election offices come in all sizes and duties, from large to small, from exclusively doing elections to elections just being one part of their overall duties for the office. A successful scale-up of this project will have to adapt to the various jurisdictions that comprise our great profession. I appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with the EAC, and I look forward to today's conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary Bina. Mr. Cox.
There we go. Commissioners, Executive Director Brianna Schlitz, friends and colleagues here at the EAC. Thank you very much for the opportunity to represent the Field Services Program at our hearing today. To begin my contribution to the panel, I want to make sure I cover a few things. First, certification establishes credibility. What do I mean by this? In the election technology space, certification creates a baseline. It is the guarantee that equipment is designed to certain standards, that the technology meets the needs of jurisdictions. Maintaining certification in the election space is pivotal in communicating to the public that equipment used in tabulating your votes makes the cut. As an industry community effort, these standards are established by a collaboration between the EAC and all of our stakeholders. The Field Services Program is a critical part in closing the loop in the cycle by ensuring continuity in certification status. When we engage in fielded system reviews, we are confirming on an ongoing basis, all while doing our part to augment state and local capabilities that systems are deployed as certified. Second, verification is both security and chain of custody tool. We talk a lot about hash verification, and there are very important reasons for that. The Field Services Program uses hash verification as its primary system verification tool, and it comes with added benefits. As a method, it's a long-standing and industry-accepted approach to matching data with data. With hashing, jurisdictions are able to match at an arm's length from their vendor and the certification body, us, deployed systems with their gold standard set of values on a bit-by-bit level. Combined with best practices in pre-election testing and post-election audit, all stakeholders have additional peace of mind in their equipment security at, in my opinion, marginal cost in time and resources. Third, our colleagues and partners demonstrate this proof of concept, and this has spurred demand. So it's a little bit of a running joke within the agency that if I'm given a microphone, I will absolutely pitch this program. And then it's 100% true, as everyone knows. The good news today is that I'm limited to time on our schedule, but also that you don't have to simply take my word for it when it comes to the success of our initial projects. Our colleagues here today from Nebraska have graciously come to Washington to provide their feedback on the program and the project with Douglas County. Manufacturers have also embraced the Field Services Program and have consistently kept an open line of communication on our efforts and have faithfully coordinated alongside us. And for a program with a lifetime now from concept to reality of less than 2 years, through outreach, we have briefed 45 of 55 states and territories, with 34 of 55 expressing interest in expanding current plans with the Field Services Program or beginning new projects in the future. And lastly, nothing is a success in a vacuum. It takes a village to tackle our objectives, and in the world of elections, we have an exceptional spirit of camaraderie. I'm grateful for this on a daily basis. I'm grateful to be able to testify on behalf of a top-notch team and agency effort. We would not be where we are today without lockstep cooperation and coordination. The Field Services Program would not have gotten off the ground without the guidance of the agency, the trust of the commissioners and our executive director, the trust of the team in the vision, and the absolutely saintly patience and encouragement of all agency leadership, with particular attention to Mr. John Panic, Ms. Jessica Bowers, and Brooke Waters. I'd like to thank our industry partners who have made facilitating projects second nature. I'd also like to thank Brian and Wayne for taking the time to come today and look forward to continuing our work together. And for those not on the panel today, but have sent the agency written feedback on work taken on with the Field Services Program, I would like to extend our sincere gratitude. Lastly, it's been a sincere highlight of my career to have gotten this far with the team, and I know that 2025 will be just as spectacular. So many, many, many thanks to the team, Sean Pumphrey, Roger Piha Paul, Tom Freitag, Warren Hines, Frank Alizia, and Evan Moran. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Mr. Cruz.
Good afternoon, Chair Hovland and Commissioners Palmer, Hicks, and McCormick. My name is Brian Cruz. I am the Douglas County Election Commissioner from Omaha, Nebraska. Thank you for the invitation to be here. It is an honor and a privilege to have worked with the EAC on the HASH project in June of 2024 being the very first jurisdiction that did this project with the EAC Field Services team. I would like to start off by saying that the project was not only a success, but a learning experience. It was also a partnership that involved the EAC Field Services team, Election Systems and Software, Nebraska Secretary of State's office, and of course, my office. The scope of the project involved the 9 ES&S 850 tabulating machines, the standalone workstation for EMS, and a sampling of the ES&S Express Vote ballot marking devices. The Douglas County Election Commission is very grateful and proud of the fact that funding has not been an issue for our office between our county and the state of Nebraska. Having said that, I have 2 full-time ES&T, Election System and Technology employees, or IT individuals on staff. These 2 employees oversee the programming, printing, and tabulation of ballots in-house at our office, in addition to other duties. These 2 individuals were a vital part of this process as they had some knowledge of hash verification, but were able to learn and complete the process successfully. The process took place in our secure counting room. The room is equipped with 2-factor authentication to enter, along with cameras and windows for full transparency. The 2 ES&T individuals educated themselves on the process with some procedural assistance from ES&S personnel ahead of time. There were 2 constants or baselines for the project: the golden hash, the original hash, for the ES&S machines, which were provided by the EAC from an independent third-party testing laboratory. The second was the golden hash for our internal air-gapped EMS computer, which was created as prescribed by ES&S via our internal ES&T department. The following is the process that occurred on each machine involved. A process was run on the ES&S machine to get the current hash. Resulting files were saved to a military-grade thumb drive from ES&S. That thumb drive was placed into the hardened laptop provided by the Nebraska Secretary of State's office. The golden hash and the current hash were compared to ensure nothing had changed. The process took 3 days and was a huge success. All machines that were tested confirmed the current hash marked the golden hash. We appreciate the opportunity to be involved in the hash program with the EAC and their field services team and all parties involved. Again, thank you for your partnership with us, and thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. We'll now turn to questions. I'll start off. Uh, Appreciate the opening comments, and there were a few things there that I think are worth lifting up. Again, this is a programmatic effort that has been envisioned for some time. The quality monitoring in our testing and certification manuals, but we had historically lacked the resources to fully implement that. So we're excited to get this off the ground. We know there were a lot of lessons learned on our end, but would really, at the table here, we've got federal, state, and local perspective. And so would really like to hear from each of you some of the key takeaways and lessons learned from each of your unique perspectives. Deputy Secretary Bennett, would you start off?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think the first takeaway, or the first thing that we learned, and based upon my naivety of the process, we initially thought when we were approaching this project, the EAC would be coming in to actually test the machines. And as the person who certified as the entity that certified the machines in the first place, we initially didn't have any issue with that. And coming to learn more about what the pilot was, it was training ourselves to be able to do that work for ourselves. That I think was a very important as we started to think about this, it was important for being able to be able to do it ourselves. But it was nice also to have an independent party such as the EAC there to make sure that we were doing it correctly and could validate what we were doing as what was going on. But based upon what we thought the project was and what the project ended up being, I am very lucky that I asked Douglas County if they were willing to do this because they were uniquely situated to be able to do that. The employees that he has are some of the best in the state. And I appreciated the work that they did on top of everything they had to do that summer to do this project. And so as we think about this moving forward, I don't have 93 Douglas counties. And as I said in my beginning remarks, how we go about scaling this or doing this moving forward for my other 92 counties is the takeaway, and I think the continued conversations of what that looks like. And I'll let my other panelists kind of like expound upon that. And if we need, I think, and if you have further questions of those ideas, happy to take those. So, but that was the initial takeaway that we had.
Thank you for that, Mr. Benna. Since you got the shout out, Mr. Cruz for Douglas County, I'll let you go next.
Sure. So, kind of going off of what Mr. Benna said, I think one of the things, one of the big takeaways is if you're going to do this project, it does take some education ahead of time. It takes some planning ahead of time. You can't just say, I'm going to do it Monday morning and show up Monday morning at 8 or 8:30 or 9 and start the process. It just doesn't quite work that way. You have to get your golden hash. You have to have some other equipment. You have to know what steps, processes, and procedures. And so the field services team was invaluable in educating us on that. And I would agree from what we initially thought our role was going to be in this, which we thought would be somewhat limited, to what it ended up being, which is we did 99% of the work, which was fine, which was great because now we know how to do it and we can say we do it. But you just have to lay that roadmap out before you do it. I will say that I am extremely fortunate that I had my two ES&T or IT folks because they had that baseline knowledge. It definitely helps if you have somebody in your office that has at least some concept of programming, and things of that nature. It just makes it a little bit easier. So I'm certainly glad we did it, but I guess the big initial takeaway for me would be planning, reading, and just really understanding what the process is. And now that, we've done it, I know Hawaii has done it, other jurisdictions have done it. Those are some of the resources beyond the EAC field team,
Thank you for that, Mr. Cruz. Mr. Cox.
So I think I can answer this more from an operational standpoint, but it is kind of notes on a theme what these two gentlemen have mentioned already. The field services team does a lot of technical translation, I think, and top level thought here is discussing hash verification and making people comfortable with it is certainly more difficult than the actual task itself. I think this is still, in terms of lessons learned operationally, this is still a people business. People need to trust you. They need to be able to know that they can call you if they have an issue, and they need to know you have their back. But top level, I think discussing it, educating people about it is just more difficult than the actual task itself, which I think comes to everyone's relief.
Thank you for that. And I certainly know, one of the takeaways there and thinking back to the last panel on the communication point, certainly something that we've made a real effort to keep communicating with both the state and the locality in this. So again, appreciate your comments and participation. Vice Chair Palmer.
I appreciate your opening comments, and I do hope to hear a little bit more about scalability, and education does seem to be a very important part of this, particularly with medium and small counties may not have the same IT support. So I really am eager to hear those comments. So transparency, chain of custody, these are, the ability to clearly demonstrate a secure process are key priorities in elections. Has this collaboration with the field services team encouraged those sort of ideas on how to demonstrate that concept? What are your thoughts on that? Because I think that was one of the main goals of it. Yeah, sure. It's really for you, Mr. Cruz.
Sure. So, absolutely. Beyond our LNA testing,
Right.
all kinds of transparency that we currently have, test decks, all of that. This is definitely another avenue for perhaps another set of folks or a different set of folks to show the accuracy and that that the machines indeed are the same as when they were first sent to us, created, that they're tabulating correctly, that nothing's been hacked or changed, things of that nature. The challenge to some degree, I think, is while you can communicate that to a small sect of the population who may understand programming and hash, is how do you effectively communicate exactly what this is, what it does, and what it proves to the larger sect of the population via the media? Because you have time constraints, as we all know, within traditional media, whether it's television, radio, or the newspaper. You have to sort of educate them, and then they have to, you may spend a half an hour educating them, then they have to confine it down to 30 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes. But it's well worth the time. I mean, it's worth the time and the effort. There's no question about that. But it absolutely is a valuable piece. It's another tool in the toolbox. And it's just another piece of testing that we can continue to point to. And I would say a year and a half, 2 years ago, I had never heard of hash. I mean, honestly. And then started to hear about it a little bit at an EAC conference from some Texas folks. And then we got involved with the EAC field services team and with the Secretary of State's office. So again, the more it's talked about, both within professional circles and the wider general public, to Dan's point, the more people will get comfortable with it, the more people will understand it, and the more useful the messaging can be there.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Also flag, great shout out there for hash validation on the EAC Learning Lab video. If you want to learn more, if you're watching this right now and like, I want to know more about that, Commissioner Hicks.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Benna, I'm sorry that I was not able to make it to your great state. I've been there before, had a great meal. And over the 31 states that I went to last year, I am hoping that this year I can go back to the great state of Nebraska. But from a state perspective, how has working with the field services team changed the state's approach to working with the county executive or even legislative stakeholders?
Thank you for the question. As I said in my opening remarks, Nebraska is, I think, uniquely qualified for pilot projects because the relationship that we have with our county, the Secretaries of State's office has with our counties and our vendors that provide election services is very robust. And that is not the case all across the country. And when I've visit with my fellow election directors, they are surprised that my county election offices pick up the phone, and vice versa. Brian sits on your EAC standards board, and we have two of our election county clerks that are on the local leadership council. And after the local leadership council's first meeting, I called both of them, or I believe one of them could go to the first meeting. And I said, "What did you think?" And the first thing out of her mouth is, "Oh my, we have a good relationship with our Secretary of State's office." So that was there before me. And I learned from that, from my predecessor. It helped that I became from their ranks. Brian Cruz and I served together as election commissioners for the number 1 and number 3 counties. So I knew him before I was even an election commissioner. And so we've bonded over the years over this, and it's easy for me to pick up the phone to ask to do this. So also, our relationship with our state legislature, very unique to be the only one with a unicameral, is also very good as well. The Committee on Elections and the body as a whole has been very receptive to election administration changes. We have had a bill passed every year since I've been in elections that we called, except for twice in 15 years, I've had an election omnibus bill that makes small changes in election administration of things that we learned from the year before. So the relationship is good. So that's a good basis to start a project like this, is that I don't have to pass a law to force Brian Cruz to do this pilot with me. I just give him a call and he says, "Well, what is it about? How long is this going to take? And who's buying dinner?" It provided for me another tool, another piece of data, another report that I can show that my county election officials can use as a backup, to back up their words that our elections are safe, accurate, and secure. We do in state law, we have logic and accuracy testing. All states do. Many states have an audit process after the fact. We do as well. It is not in statute. We define what it is. We ask the counties to do it. And I say all the time, the counties could tell me to pound sand, but they do it because it's important. Those entities that love to do surveys and rankings kind of ding us because we don't have it in statute. I don't need to, because my counties know how important that it is. So if they're willing to trust me to go through these audits, they're willing to trust me, and I'm going to give them all the tools necessary that they can back up what they're saying, that their results are accurate. In addition to this, in the last 2 general elections, we expanded our manual audit to include at least 1 precinct in every county instead of just a percentage of all whole. So everyone had at least 1 report on the manual audit. But Douglas County also now has this in our legislative hearings on election bills that start tomorrow. And Brian and I got to hop on a plane real fast to get back to Nebraska to show our state legislature that our largest jurisdiction passed with flying colors. And again, it's just another tool to do this. So for me, I think for other states, it would help strengthen a relationship that may be strained. For me, it helps with the bond because I'm fighting for them by doing things like this to give them what they need to be successful.
Thank you. And I think that that's great that this allows for your state to show that to show the voters that the election is safe, accurate, and secure. And I hope that other states take advantage of this as well. And I turn this back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Hicks. Commissioner McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you haven't, it's the place to go have a great dinner. I've had some real dinners in Nebraska, I just say it. But I also want to say thank you to you folks for being on our boards and providing us with good feedback. And I think we have a great relationship with Nebraska, and you do answer the phone, which we appreciate. So thank you for that. Commissioner Cruz and Deputy Secretary Benna, from an election security standpoint, what kind of added value have you experienced by working with the EAC's Field Services Program? Let's start with you, Mr. Benna.
As I previously said, it added an extra layer of testing and proof of what we're trying to communicate to the public. I was asked in a interim study hearing late last year, while we knew that the project went well, but the report hadn't been issued yet. And I alluded to the fact that, a report will be coming because people were questioning, why can't we look inside your machines? Well, it's going to void a warranty. They may not like the answers, but those are the answers. But if I can provide another independent source to validate the accuracy of our machines, that helps. And so we think now that this report has been released, this hearing, our subsequent legislative hearings that we'll be having over the next few months on election bills, this is an important thing to discuss as we move forward. And if they like what they see, then how, again, in our state, can we scale this up with the assistance of the field services team? And our interaction with the field services team has been absolutely fantastic, from the pre-planning to the actual visit to working on the report afterwards and the release of the report. We have had nothing but a positive experience, and we hope to build upon that in the future.
And Mr. Cox, you didn't pay him to say that, did you?
I did not.
Thank you. You're under oath. Commissioner Cruz.
Well, I'd just like to echo a lot of what Mr. Benna said, and also just kind of reiterate that, the EAC is not only a division of the federal government, obviously, but it is a respected entity and organization. So, when we work with the EAC and the field services team, and then the report is put out, and then we have a hearing like this, that lends immense credibility to the findings. It just goes to show that through our partners at Secretary of State, ES&S, who happens to be our vendor, I know other vendors have done the hash verification, and of course the EAC fields team along with us. It just, it just shows professionalism and lends more credibility and confidence. And again, it is another tool in the toolbox. And in the climate we're all living in with elections, you can never have too many of those. As we all know, different avenues are good. Some folks may need a different avenue than other folks to see that elections are safe and secure. Some may need multiple. But if you just keep remaining patient and keep working with them and showing them good, sound, professional, outcomes that show elections and counting machines and tabulating machines are safe and secure, I think that's the best process for all of us to use to keep moving forward with.
Thank you for your comments, and your feedback is important for us to know that this is a valuable program to continue investing in. So appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I would just add real quick. Nebraska is one of those states, we do not have an internal testing and certification program. So we rely on the EAC and their work to initially allow any system to be in the state of Nebraska. So to have something like this to show us that what we bought is still what we bought is very important. And it's something that we may not have considered in the past because we just believed that the LNA testing before and after was adequate. But this has reimagined what we believe is making sure that our machines are accurate. It's a good tune-up. So.
Thank you for that comment. I'm going to come back to Mr. Cruz and Mr. Benna as well. Thinking about the report from field services and the recommendations that were in it. Do you view those, I guess, as certainly fair, but then also sustainable or scalable? And again, recognizing that not all jurisdictions are the same, a lot of variety in size, resources, etc. Would also be interested to hear a little bit more of your thoughts on what something like this might look like statewide or elsewhere, or how we could provide additional support, particularly for those small medium jurisdictions that might have fewer resources and support in this area. Mr. Cruz, we'll start with you.
Sure. Yes, I think the report was certainly fair. Um, you know, it was an accurate and good report. I would say, in an ideal world, that you would probably want to do this before and after every election. In a practical world, I'm just not sure that that's feasible. Like currently in Douglas County, we had a special election February 11th, turn around, have a special election March 11th. I have City of Omaha April 1st and City of Omaha General May 13th. So, um, perhaps doing it every so often, or in statewide elections and maybe one special or something like that, of nature, where you have a sampling, a random sampling of the hash verification. The other thing is, in the state of Nebraska, and I'm sure most other states have state associations. We have our clerks, register of deeds, and election commissioners, because many of the clerks in Nebraska are the election commissioners. So, if you wanted to, which I think we may be interested in doing this in Nebraska, if you wanted to have smaller and medium-sized jurisdictions do it, it certainly would be valuable for that. We have a couple conferences a year. We always have one in the summer in June, and then we have a big one with all of the county officials in December. And then I think it's every other odd year. I believe it is in October, the Secretary of State's office does one for just election officials. Perhaps that's something where the EAC field team could come out and do a workshop on that, because we have workshops during those sessions. And so, they could come and do a workshop, answer questions, give some samples in Nebraska. We've done it, obviously. We would be willing to partner on something like that. But even for other states, to go to association meetings and stuff like that. So you're maybe getting the most bang for your buck, so to speak. And also, when you get a large group of folks together, questions begot questions, right? And ideas and suggestions as well.
Thank you for that, Mr. Benna.
This is something that, once the report has come out, then that's my job to figure. My job has always been to figure it out.
That's why you're here.
Yeah, that's that. If you have a job description for an election director, it's figure it out. That's line number one. As I stated in my previous testimony, this worked for Douglas County. This could work for a few other counties. This will have struggles the lower down the population line that I have. So in order to scale this up, in order to be able to do it, the thought process is, well, the state could have a group of individuals that go out and do this, trained, initially through EAC and visiting other jurisdictions that do this. So I can take the burden off of off my counties from having to do it internally, because, as I say, if I have counties in which the clerk comes to a conference, they have to lock the door or ask the treasurer to answer the phone because they're the only one. So it can get difficult. The other things that I thought about as the EAC considers about their own scalability of this, depending on funding issues, if the funding's not there to triple the field services team or quadruple or what have you, you turn it into a model of training entities or vendors that can do this work for states and turn it into a revenue generator for the EAC, so to speak, depending upon the scalability of it all. And so that we have an EAC approved vendor that we could use to be able to do that. And as Commissioner Cruz says, do we do this in just before the primary of an election year? Do we do it every election? The scalability of this is in regards to how long a project would take and how many people we have and can travel 93 counties. And that's a unique number for 1.2 million registered voters, 1.9 citizens. So that's a lot of traveling across the state. So that to me is the takeaway, is that I think it's a little harder, the smaller jurisdictions, to be able to do what Douglas County did. How can I help my counties relieve that burden like I have in many other situations in the last 7 years to relieve that burden? And I think a state team could do that, or vendors could be established through EAC certification to help with that process. So.
Thank you for that, Vice Chair Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question really is for everybody. How critical was the participation by the industry, by the vendor in these projects, as well as sort of planning for the future? So far, we've had really good response from them, but just like to hear from you all. And we can start with you, Wayne, and then we'll go to the commissioner and then Dan.
I think again, we have a great relationship with election system and software. It doesn't hurt that I can see them from my house. Yeah, so literally. So
Big flag.
So they want it to work in the home state. And I want it to work in the home state. Their employees vote in Nebraska, so they want their machines to work in Nebraska. They want their machines to work nationwide. So doing things of this was vital to have them on board. And this is not the only thing we've asked them to do. The other two pilots that I had to have buy-in from our vendor. And so they have been very receptive, and I think it's very important, but also it's a report for them too. And so I hearken back, it's the process of selling a house. The seller is going to tell you have the best house ever. However, if you're going to have to have a home inspector and a deed check to make sure everything's right. And this is the deed check. This is the home inspection. ESNS, having done this in other states, it was critical to have that guidance of what they saw as possible pitfalls in this testing that's happened in other states. And I think what they learned from it is that there might be easier ways to conduct this testing that other vendors have already thought of, that in their new equipment, how you can make the verification process be sped up. And so my hope is they're learning in this project and future iterations of their software and their hardware, they can make the process go faster. So.
Yeah, I would say the expertise from both the EAC and the field services team and ESNS. And I don't know if they became experts because they were coming to Douglas County and this was the first run at it. I'm sure there was some education on their part, but it just, it gave us more confidence in saying, hey, these folks know what they're doing. I mean, yeah, there was some learning that we did all along, but when we had questions or we said, now is this what we're going to be doing? And when we were having those planning calls, somebody almost always could answer that question and say, no, this is what we envision happening, or ES&S might say this is what we have done someplace else. If they didn't know the answer, they got back to us. And so I would say the knowledge that was there when we started this project between the field services team and ES&S made this go very smoothly, because even when we first started, we had allotted a whole week for this because we were like, how long is this going to take? And we really didn't know if this was going to take 3-4 hours a machine, 2 hours a machine. We didn't really know. And the first one, I think, took, just 2.5, 3 hours because folks were asking questions. Can I see this? Can I see that? What'd you do here? What'd you do there? Things of that nature. But then once you got moving through the process, obviously, the more you did it, the smoother it got. And so just that knowledge there. And as I said earlier, the expectations, the pre-planning, the pre-meetings, the communication, like you talked about in your last panel, the communication is so vital before they show up on site, because once they show up on site, you don't want to essentially burn a day going over what's going to happen, what to expect, and all this, when you can be doing that ahead of time so you're ready to roll when they show up. You can utilize, the most of your time and do the most testing on the most equipment possible.
So from the agency perspective, there's probably a few ways to answer this question. A few things that come to mind for me anyway. Immediately, given Commissioner Cruz's answer to coordinating with our industry partners is essential for their comfortability. And a relationship of trust, we maintain not only a relationship of trust with folks at the state, folks at the local level, but it's critical for our mission, agency mission, for us to maintain that trust with vendors and manufacturers as well. Like I said in my remarks earlier, we talk about hash verification a lot, but that's also not the only thing that this team is charged with doing. There could be a system change that we're walking through somewhere, assisting our main test and certification group. We might have a different hash verification project popping off, somewhere else in the country that we're working with that same vendor with. It's kind of the expression I use on the team is, can't throw a party in someone's house without inviting everyone. So it's just important to keep them in the loop for continuity and trust. It's important for vendors to trust us as well. Vendors too are also in a key position to identify folks who might want our services as well. So I'd always envisioned it not just to be an outreach function from us, but if vendors identify folks maybe more resource constrained, if it's something that we can jump in and help, or at least come up with a creative solution alongside the vendor with, that was something there as well. So I think it's critically important. And that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Hicks.
Mr. Cox, building on that, the program is in a position now to not only conduct field work from a technical perspective, but also to promote resources from the agency and to bring data back. How have other field services projects directly impacted other mission critical work at the agency?
Commissioner Hicks, thanks for that question. So there are a number of examples I could give. First example I'll give, how else do we support other mission critical items? So I think I might have teased this in my last response, but the state of Oregon did invite us to Multnomah County a while back to oversee, after they had some staffing changes, to oversee a state certification of a very particular system in the city of Portland. And we were there, while we were there on site, we did actually discover something that needed to change and had a serious effect on its federal test campaign. So I know we're always on the lookout for items like that. I think, like I said, hash verification, we talk about it a lot, but it's really our foot in the door for a lot of other critical support items that we provide elsewhere. Let's see, same thing with the state of Texas. We've gone on a number of ride-alongs with them for hash verification in some of their medium-sized counties, and hopefully we'll be visiting them again before too long. Other items, since we have such a big outreach function, we're naturally positioned to be in a good place to pitch other items that the agency works on. People have poll book security is really one of the many tips of the security spear situation across the country. So we take a lot of those questions, but not necessarily being the experts. We can point them directly to the ESTEP program, and a program that addresses those items very specifically. Those are a few items. Thanks. Thank you, Commissioner Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Hicks, and a good reminder there that, again, the nature of the EAC, as we've have said, is that we are a customer service agency supporting state and local election officials, and I think that's a great example of how that can work in practice, so appreciate that. Commissioner McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cox, what are the near future plans for the program? Based on growing demand you described, what does the remainder of this year look like for you and your team?
Well, in short, very busy. This year, since it's an odd calendar year, we're prioritizing our team's mandate to do manufacturer audits for their quality management systems. So that is on deck for this year. We want to continue to be a good liaison for other components of the agency. I think something I didn't include in my last answer, but I might very well have had, is continuing to work with our clearinghouse function. Because like I said earlier as well, we do so much translating of really heavy technical subjects to a non-technical audience. A recent collaboration that Chairman Hovland, you boosted a little bit earlier. It is a really great video. I will also boost it. Please go watch it. It's a great resource. But with Clearinghouse, there are natural points of intersection with that program as well, and developing a lot of basic baseline best practices needs for folks, things like that. We're going to continue to fill the calendar as much as we can with field assignments. And like the stat I had mentioned earlier, 55 states and territories, including the district here as well, want to continue working with the program. So I'd like to scale up as much as we possibly can, be on the road, helping folks as much as we absolutely can, and continue to help folks like Brian and Wayne here as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for this great conversation. With that, we will conclude this panel. Before we do, I did just want to note that Mr. Cox referenced letters that we had received and wanted to entertain a motion to include those documents in the record. Is there a motion for that?
Mr. Chair, I move to enter the documents into the record as they've been referenced by Mr. Cox in his testimony.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, the motion has been properly moved and seconded. Prior to calling a vote on the question, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we will enter those into the record, and thank you again for your testimony, joining us for this conversation and your participation in this important project. To follow up on this conversation, and witnesses, if you're welcome to stay in the front row if you'd like here, but you're also welcome to take your other seats if you would like. I will give you that option. But next on our agenda, we wanted to continue on discussing the field services effort here. As outlined in HAVA, the Field Services Program is derived from the EAC Testing and Certification Division's Quality Monitoring Program, where the agency is positioned to assist states and local jurisdictions in the verification of EAC certified fielded systems on an ongoing basis. To best accomplish this, the Field Services team has a deployable full-time staff of subject matter experts to proactively provide a combination of virtual and on-site services and training to help officials. As we've heard today, the Field Services released its first 2 official reports in January of this year. And on behalf of all the commissioners, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to the program's director, Dan Cox, who we just heard from. Given these initial reports, Field Services was in somewhat of a pilot status, developing the methodology of the more advanced quality monitoring program. Again, recognizing what it was that we at the EAC could do to support election officials, identifying the needs of election officials. And from what we've heard today, I would propose to my fellow commissioners that we put to a vote the following. It shall be the policy of the commission that Field Services shall continue to operate and provide states voluntary offerings as has been done with the initial reports from Hawaii and Nebraska. It is the commission's view that the operation of the program as discussed today offers an added level of confidence and security for the integrity of election systems. And with that, I'll now open the floor for any comments from commissioners prior to calling a vote on the recommendation. Vice Chair Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, I'd like to thank the state of Nebraska and Commissioner Cruz for their testimony today and the other jurisdictions that have participated in the pilot. I think that Field Services, when we first started thinking about this, is really to help the jurisdictions across the country in these areas of technical confirmation that their systems are the gold standard. And under HAVA, this quality monitoring program wasn't a reality without the resources and personnel to back it up. So I'm very pleased on the progress we're making to support the community. And with that, I am supportive of this policy. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Palmer. Commissioner Hicks.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that Mr. Benna said it well in showing that if states allow for this to happen in their jurisdictions, they can further give their constituents an understanding that the election is safe, accurate, and secure. And that I think that, you know, as the agency has grown, it's grown well. And so with this new added program, I think that we are not only showing our worth to the elections community, but also the value that having this service will be. And with that, I fully support this. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Hicks. Commissioner McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would say a quality monitoring program is something, first, it's mission critical. I think it's something that the EAC has needed for a long time. As I said earlier, it's important to invest in the security of our systems. Election officials and manufacturers must be able to stand behind the security of their equipment to help voters have confidence and trust in the outcome of our elections. So I think this is a critical program, and I would like to see us continue it. I would also like to thank Nebraska and Hawaii and the other states, Texas and others, who have interacted with our Field Services team, and I look forward to the expansion of this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McCormick. I'll now entertain a motion to adopt the commission policy that the Field Services Program shall continue to operate and provide states voluntary offerings as it has done with the initial reports for Hawaii and Nebraska.
I move that we adopt the recommendation as presented.
And a second.
Second.
Who wants it?
Commissioner McCormick got that one.
All right. Photo finish. It has been properly moved and seconded. Any other discussion before we move to adopt?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure that folks know that I also thank the 4 states that participated in this program as well.
Excellent. All right. I will now call the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, all in favor, and the motion to adopt the commission policy is approved. Next up, rotation of the chair, finally. Uh, Per HAVA Section 203C, the commission shall select a chair and vice chair from among its members for a term of 1 year, except the chair and vice chair may not be affiliated with the same political party. Looking back on my time as chairman, it's no surprise that 2024 was a big year for election officials. In the lead up to the November, the EAC focused on our core mission of assisting election officials, producing easy to use customizable resources, training videos, and sharing best practices from across the country. If you would like to know more about that, I encourage you to check out the EAC's 2024 annual report. Amazing reading and really a testament to our team. But as I noted earlier, the EAC is a customer service agency. Our programming is guided and informed by the needs, interest, and feedback from our stakeholders, the election officials on the ground, and the wider election community. It's what makes this agency so critical and effective. I'm pleased to have served as EHC chairman during this important time and look forward to continuing the work with you all. I will now entertain a motion to approve the recommendation that commission rotate chair and vice chair of the commission effective February 24th, 2025, whereby Commissioner Donald Palmer shall begin a term of chair for 1 year and Commissioner Thomas Hicks shall begin a term of vice chair for 1 year. Is there a motion to adopt?
I move that we adopt the recommendation as presented.
Second.
It has been properly moved and
It's gonna be one of us. It's gonna be one of us.
it's important you chime in on this one. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, I will now call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. It's your last chance.
It's all right.
And the motion is approved. Congratulations, Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. Future Chair on Monday, Mr. Vice Chair on Monday. I will now turn it over to Vice Chair Palmer for any remarks.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate all the hard work that you did over the presidential cycle, and the other commissioners as well. I know that can be grinding work, and we appreciate it. I think we got a lot done this past year, and hopefully this next year we're able to continue to work on the VVSG and increase the amount of paper ballots that are being used. We can look at audits and professional standards for that, and sort of that transparency that you have with that, and how we can support with research and support for list maintenance, and how we do that in compliance with the National Voter Registration Act of federal law. So there are many issues that we're going to be looking at this past year. Just today's focus was so encouraging. We got a lot on our plate, and we will in the year ahead. So thank you for your service, and look forward to the upcoming year and working with the staff on all the priorities we have. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. I am now supposed to ceremonially pass this to you, but I'm going to need it back. So
Here we go. All right.
I don't know.
We got it.
Give it back to me. I get it for another couple days.
So it starts Monday, huh? It's not today?
Not today, but soon.
Soon.
Don't worry about it.
1 week of rest.
Yes, rest up. Well, thank you all for joining us today as we highlighted the exciting work of the EAC's technology programs. We're especially grateful to all of the panelists for joining us today to share the successes and lessons learned with our new initiatives and for helping the EAC to continue to improve our technological capacity to better serve the election community in this rapidly evolving space. For more information about the work of the EAC, you can check out our 2024 annual report on our website. You may remember it from just a moment ago, but another plug, really, again, a testament to our team. The EAC really has put together an amazing team doing great work to support election officials around the country. And I know that I and my colleagues are so proud of that and what we've been able to accomplish. And so, in a final note, thank you to the staff for both organizing today's meeting and for all of the work that you do year round. We appreciate it. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
To adjourn.
Seconded.
It has been properly moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, this meeting of the EAC is adjourned. Thank you.
I thought it was going to get it for good.
Now you can have it. No.